Hi everyone, it's Beryl from Jerusalem. This week's Parsha is Parsha Vayeshev. Vayeshev has come from the verb to sit. So who was sitting? This is the story, famous story of Joseph and his brothers. So we learn something about jealousy. Jealousy is really something that can lead to one's ultimate destruction. You have the jealousy between Yaakov, Joseph's father, and his brother Esau, which we spoke about last week. And now we have a different jealousy. Because Yaakov favored Joseph, we have a situation where the brothers became very jealous. And we have to know when we're interacting with people how to keep humble and how not to create a situation with other people where jealousy occurs and that evolves into hatred and in many cases death. So Joseph, we call Yosef Hatzadik. Hatzadik, that's a special name because there's a definite article. Ha means the righteous one. So why does he have this special title? There are many righteous Jews. But like his father Yaakov, a tzaddik, but not Hatzadik, like his father Yaakov, he had to overcome extreme challenges. As a matter of fact, his life mirrors his father's life, very much so, because he fought to struggle with his identity, even in a foreign place, even in a place of idol worshippers. Just like Jacob or Yaakov became Yisrael after he struggled with the angel of Esau, that man in the night that he struggled with all night. That's where he became himself, and he utilized his self-confidence and his faith in God to move forward and be able to confront Esau with 400 men after leaving the home of Lavan. But now we have a whole different scenario, but it's the same idea with Yaakov in that he learned his Torah from Yaakov, his father, and he never lost faith in that God, and he never lost his sense of identity as a Jew. You know, there's a very interesting movie many years called The Lion King. So the Jewish people is referred to as the lion, and Yehuda is the lion. And this story, Yehuda actually looks after Yosef and argues with Yosef because this was the famous story where the brothers sold him into the pit. It was written, Haburek ve'en bo mayim. What does it mean that the pit is empty? There's no there's no water. Rashi comes to tell us that there's snakes and scorpions, and it's a dangerous place. And here's Yosef on his own in the pit, so to speak. But he is who he is because he's the son of Yaakov. He's the son of Jacob. He's the son of Israel. That means he's able to overcome many things with his faith and with his disposition to know that everything happens for the good. How could it be? He goes to his brothers. They say, "Oh, here comes this dreamer." He got himself into the situation with the dreams because he was telling them, "Oh, one day you're all going to come and bow down to me." You know, and his father says, "Don't talk to your brothers like that because they're not going to like it." Then it came to the point where his father gives him the command to go into see how your brothers are doing, shepherding the sheep. You see the little lamb up there? That's the Jewish people. We were shepherds. That was our business thousands of years ago. So, but the sheep has a master, and we have to follow the master, so to speak. So the idea, the Torah concept is that we are like sheep following the commandments of God, and we have to struggle with these commandments, even when other nations, other societies try to change our culture. Like in this week, after this Shabbos, the very next night is Hanukkah. And the Greeks also tried to interfere with the Jewish culture, which I'll explain next week. But we Jews are like the Lion King. We, on the one hand, we want to have a good time, and we're commanded to be happy, but it's not always a simple thing to be happy. In the Lion King, the lion wanted to party with his friends, but he realized he wasn't taking the responsibility of a king. A king has to be for his people. What's he doing partying with his friends? So eventually he goes on he comes to know who he was and why he was created. He was created to be a lion, the king of the jungle. Well, the Jews were created, like everyone, in the image of God, to be a light upon the nations. The Jews had to realize this, and the other nations as well have to realize this. For a Jew to be himself, it's like the cartoon in The Lion King. It's not just a party. You know, you're going to pay for it if you're not going to go and try to follow your will. What is your will? What is your purpose in this life? What is the will of God for me as an individual? So Yosef, he was in the bore, and he said, "Borek ve'ein bo mayim." There's no, it's all darkness. What's going to happen to me? Well, another of his brothers said, maybe we should sell them to these Ishmaelites in the desert. And the Ishmaelites were coming with a caravan. And this caravan, a lot of them were into like selling neft or gas, not gas, but oils. So they happened to be selling like perfumes. So he was quite lucky. They pulled him out of the pit. They sold him, and then they said, "Okay, let's see what God has in store for him. If he's not guilty, then he'll be fine. And if he is guilty, then let Hashem do the job, not us." We are responsible for our brothers, and they also had to answer to Jacob, when they would come home. What happened to him? They gave a story that he was taken and eaten by a wild animal, and his father was very sad. So, what happened? They take him out of this pit. He comes into the house of Pharaoh, and also he's likable because he has a sense of kindness. The baker and the wine steward there had dreams, and he mentioned that Paro's dream was upset and he couldn't figure it out. But he did figure out their dreams. They had dreams, and one of the dreams of the baker said, "Well, there's like three baskets on his head." Well, he said, in 3 days, the Paro's going to come to you, and you're going to be hung from this tree, and the birds eating the bread will be devouring you. Okay. Now he gave the straight, simple interpretation of the dream. He says, they're from God, they're not from me. So when the Paro heard about this, because his other buddy in the jail said, I had a dream of about grapes, and 3 grapes, and he said, well, and squeezing the grapes in the wine of the goblet of the Paro. He says, in 3 days you will be released from this prison, this pit. You see, he went from one pit to another pit, but even in the pit he gave life to those around him, and he was well known, and he had the chachma, he had the wisdom with God. to interpret dreams. So he said, remember me, please, when you get out of here, so I can also be released. Now, how did he get into the jail to begin with? Paro had a manager called Potiphar, and Potiphar's wife, he was a very handsome man. Potiphar's wife was always after him, and in order to avoid her advances, he had to run away from her. So because he didn't take to her advantage, a married woman, to the Paro, and he was a tzaddik, which means he knows who am I to be with the wife of my master, of the king, so to speak, you know. And she made up a story, and he ended up being in jail too. But the bottom line is, wherever he was always faithful, and he was always optimistic. Even in jail, even in the pit, he prayed to God. In jail, he prayed also, I'm sure. But other people in the jail, in the prison, appreciated who he was as a person. And the Paro saw that he also had this special gift, and eventually was released. So this is the story of Yosef HaTzadik. I mean, there are a lot of things going on in the Parsha, but I just wanted to mention this special thing because it is really essential to understanding and to holding on to what you've got. Here he was in a foreign country. His brothers have left him to die in a pit. God sent these merchants. They had mercy on him, and they sold him to the merchants. And then all of a sudden, he ends up in the house of Paro. Eventually, he became second to the Paro. So we see that because he had emunah, which is faith in Hebrew, that he was able to succeed in every step. Rather than go into depression, he took his situation in every instance, and he advanced himself to become like the king of Egypt himself. So this gets a little bit more in detail but I just wanted to mention this, that whatever happens in our lives, we have to strive to be good to one another. Jealousy and hatred is not the right focus. The focus is to bring Hashem into your lives and try to understand what is happening. And whatever happens is actually for the best, but we really can't understand it because we have limited minds, and sometimes our imagination doesn't bring us anywhere. It just brings us to further depression sometimes, you know. They say Yaakov, his father had nevuah, but when his son left, nevuah is prophecy, but when his son left him all these years, he wasn't the same man. He wasn't happy. And the Torah says we need to be happy. We need to understand whatever's happening in our lives is for our benefit. And if you can understand that, then you become a tzaddik, like Yosef HaTzadik, Yosef the righteous. So you should all look to be happy, and in this time of Hanukkah coming up, bring the light of happiness into your soul when you gaze at the Hanukkah candles, and know that eventually this concept of inner light and connecting with Hashem is a journey for everyone, not just the Jewish people. These are the days of darkness, but eventually Hashem says, the days of darkness, which is Yaakov, he is the night prayer, as I mentioned previously. The days of darkness will be elevated. When the Mashiach comes, the Redeemer, within 6,000 to 7,000 years, it is predicted, it is promised, in the merit of these great individuals, Avraham, Yitzhak, and Yaakov, of course, Yosef, what he did in Egypt as the only Jew in Egypt, and he retained his speech and he retained everything because God was with him. And he knew that he had a purpose there. And eventually it was to bring his brothers together again and reunite his brothers and to teach them what brotherly love is. And this will be explained in next week's Parsha. Everyone have a good Shabbos.